Where do you sit on the acronym? What do you call it?
Oh, God, the tough questions directly in front. I mean, to be very honest, I'm sitting in the general.
Hello and welcome to episode 260 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast, a proud member of the Marketing Podcast Network. And I hope you're well and staying as sane as you feel you need to be. I'm your host, Ian Truscott. I'm not a rock star, but I am a CMO. And on this podcast, I chat with a band of marketing chums who share their marketing street knowledge, which I hope will bring out the rockstar marketer in you. In the marketing studio this week, I'm delighted to be joined by my chum, former guest and experienced B2B CMO Thomas Peham, and we dig into what generative AI is doing for search and a really interesting project he's working on. But first, we need to pay the bar tab. I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back after this word.
We'll be right back
After this word. We'll be right back.
My dad works in B2B marketing, but I never really knew what that meant. Then one day, my dad came by my school for career day and told everyone in my class he was a big ROAS man. Then he just kept saying things like, the bigger the ROAS, the better, over and over. My friends still laugh at me to this day. I think it means calculating a return on ad spend. One thing's for sure, I'll be known as the ROAS man's kid for the rest of my days. Why couldn't you just be a fireman or a lawyer? Why? You ruined my life, Dad.
Not everyone gets B2B, but LinkedIn has the people who do. And with ads on LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people based on job title, industry, likelihood to buy, and more. Start converting your B2B audience into high-quality leads today. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/MPN. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
This episode is brought to you by Audi. The road is calling. Embrace the thrill of the drive with the all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron. Featuring effortless power, serious acceleration, and advanced Audi tech. It's not just a new EV, it's a new way to experience driving. The all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron is here. The next chapter of Audi starts now.
Welcome back to Rockstar CMO FM. Thomas, how are you?
Hey, Ian, I'm really well. Thanks for having me today.
Yes, no, you're very welcome. It's a pleasure to chat to you. It's been a while. I hadn't realized. I mean, you and I chat all the time, but you were last on the podcast on episode 66. And one tip I would give people, if you're starting a podcast because you want to meet good people, this is a great example because I enjoyed meeting you back then. And the conversations and the work we've done together since has been really cool. So it's nice to have you back on the show, Thomas. It's been a while. And so the listeners may not have heard of you for a while, but I've had the pleasure of some great conversations. So how are you, mate? What are you up to?
Hey, I mean, thanks for having me again. It feels like a long time ago in a way, right? That's for when we connected for the very first time. And yeah. But yeah, no, I'm doing really well. Ian, lots is going on in the marketing space these days, right? Going through the whole AI hype life cycle, and I'm sure we come to that in a bit as well. But actually, I've been thinking a lot this week about our shared speaking engagement that we had last year in September in London, when you and I were kind of discussing the rules of B2B marketing and how things are changing as we as we went back then into 2025 and ahead. And I've been thinking a lot about those big questions around, do we even need corporate websites in the future if AI is taking over everything? How is content changing, right? How do the rules of content change based on a change in user behavior that we see? And I mean, I think I've been having lots of conversations these days with other marketing teams as well. And with the whole evolution of ChatGPT being everywhere these days, I feel there are some key questions out there that some marketing teams struggle with. Basic questions like, do I even block my website from chatbots, right? From ChatGPT and etc. So I don't want to skip ahead, but this week has been kind of a journey back to our Wonderwall Oasis talk in London last September.
Well, also we did the webinar, didn't we? Which I think is publicly available on the Storyblock website. True. So I'll add a link to that in the show notes. So if people want to see what you're talking to there, absolutely. And my God, mate, I mean, you've dived straight in. There's like 5 topics there we could certainly cover. But one of the things the reason why I wanted to have you back, well, there's lots of reasons why I want to have you back on the show. I mean, it's just a pleasure to chat to you, mate. But I want to pull on one of those threads that we discussed in both the in-person event and the webinar. And that is what you just mentioned about generative AI and what this means to marketers. And specifically, we've had some really good discussions about SEO and what that means. And also this new acronym. I don't know where you sit on this. I can't remember. We did chat about it, but some people are calling it GEO, generative AI optimization, or generative engine optimization, or AIO, artificial intelligence optimization. Let's get that bit sorted out first. Where do you sit on the acronym? What do you call it?
Oh, God, the tough questions directly. I mean, to be very honest, I'm sitting in the generative engine optimization team, GEO, because it's simpler, it's more straightforward. People understand it, I think. From SEO to GEO, it's not too far-stretched. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there are way too many abbreviations out there. Maybe we have an industry have to agree on one standard. Not sure if we can manage that. But no, I mean, at the end of the day, for me, it's the same thing, right? No matter if you call it GEO or AI search visibility optimization, AI SVO, or any of those other abbreviations. At the end of the day, it's about how you are being found as a brand on AI search, right? You can basically summarize SEO as in how visible are you on search engines and what are you optimizing and doing in order to be better visible. And you can make the same point that GEO and AI SVO is about the same thing, being found not only on the internet, but also being found on LLMs and within AI search experiences.
Yeah, it's funny. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were making the case that actually these AI engines are just search engines. So we should just keep calling it SEO, but I don't think, I'm not sure that's going to fly. But why do you think, so, I mean, we've covered this a couple of times, but let's go down this path and establish a foundation. But why is it important? Why? Because I'm not sure how much traffic is being driven right now by ChatGPT. But why do you think it's important?
So I think there are fundamentally two, call it disruptions, or two things going on in the marketing space that impact this new channel, let's say, this new evolution of SEO. One is Google, right? I mean, let's start with what's been around for many, many years. It's a search engine called Google, and Google has been around for many years, and Google is driving traffic to many of our websites. And that's why SEO became a thing, right? Because we all wanted to be better found on Google. And when we look at the recent changes that Google introduced and did in 2024, right, we also have to talk about AI, the role of AI and the role of AI search, because Google introduced officially in May 2024 Google AI Overviews. Formerly, it was known as Google Search Generative Experiences, SGE, and it was only available in the kind of as a beta product in the Google Labs situation. So users basically had to go into their Google settings to manually activate it and try it. Google now, meaning last year in May, rolled out AI Overviews in the US. Then they continuously rolled it out across other countries. It's available in the UK. It's available in Australia, in Canada. By now, I think AI Overviews are available in 100 countries plus. But one fun fact, I'm calling in here from German-speaking countries, and we don't have AI Overviews in Germany, in Austria, and Switzerland. And to be honest, people are afraid about that. People are nervous about what's to come, because from the data we see, from the trends we see in the US and the UK, Google introducing AI Overviews had quite an impact on some businesses in terms of their organic traffic and how also organic traffic declined. I heard statements from marketing teams who told me, my traffic is down 20%, 30%. There are even some statistics out there where you can see that some websites are seeing even worse cases there where traffic is down 50% organically. Yeah. So why is that the case, right? You can make the point that Google has always been, in the last few years, been focused on providing answers directly in a Google's result page, right, in the SERP. If you ask, how's the weather in London, right, you're going to get an answer directly on Google. Yeah. I don't need to click on the website. And basically, AI overview and AI-generated answer from Google isn't anything different, right? Google is trying to be helpful directly in the Google interface. The hard part for us as marketers, as website providers, is the number of traffic, the share of traffic that we potentially are able to receive is going down and down. Spark Toro from Rand Fishkin regularly publishes that zero-click study, right? Yeah. Where 60% of all Google search queries end up on a zero-click. You and I are fighting for 40% of the cake, right?
Well, yeah.
And with AI overview, that trend isn't going away. It's rather accelerating. And that's what many marketing teams are trying to figure out right now. Mm-hmm. Because since Google introduced AI overviews, there are basically two plays here at hand, right? One play is, how are you as a brand getting into those AI overviews? How are you getting into the AI engine, answering and making sure you are there for those respective answers, right? And the other play is, how can you continuously invest in SEO and organic efforts to still be visible for this smaller and smaller piece of the cake? So the reason why we're talking about this today, I think, is because Google is driving that change, and it's sometimes not a pleasant change for us.
No.
And then, for sure, ChatGPT became a thing, right? Everybody's using it. Why do I say everybody and not many? ChatGPT is among the top 10 websites in the world. I think it's, according to SimilarWeb, the 8th biggest website in the world, right? Does it get the same amount of traffic as Google? Not yet, right? Do I predict that ChatGPT will take over Google? Probably not, and not anytime soon. But we also have to acknowledge that our consumers, our audiences are on ChatGPT doing research, researching, informing themselves, educating themselves. And at some point, they will also buy directly through ChatGPT, right?
Yeah.
Or other AI search engines such as Perplexity. And the thing there, again, is I would say ChatGPT from an experience is maybe even more similar to Facebook than it is to Google, because we go to Google to find answers for certain problems, questions, and it's a portal. Google most often is a portal, and we end up on a website, as we spoke earlier. I go to ChatGPT to get an answer directly from ChatGPT.
Yeah.
The click-through rates to websites, yes, ChatGPT also now has a web browsing capabilities. You need to activate that as a user. Not every search query you put on ChatGPT activates and triggers a web search. But where it does, you could also click through to a website. And that's why many of us already see referral traffic coming from ChatGPT as well. But long story short, ChatGPT is a different interface. It's a walled garden in a way, right? And
well, lots to unpack there, Thomas, that you covered there.
Sorry for the monologue.
No, that's fine, man. One of the things I should point out to the listeners is that you're based in Austria, right? So when you're talking about that German experience, and I think you're also describing that Google search page experience now, which is the top third of the page is almost generative, the AI answers. Yeah. The next third is the sponsored stuff, and then all your organic stuff is below that. And I think a lot of marketers are finding, particularly in busy categories, that organic doesn't work for them anymore, almost, right? Is what you're saying. They've lost 50% of their traffic. And the other thing I think is that if you are in the business of providing weather, sports, or any of that kind of content that Google can easily synthesize through through its results, then you're not going to get any traffic, right? So you need to think about your content from that perspective. But and I think, but that's a big miss for us, isn't it? Because Google, as you were describing, they're different experiences. We go to these things for different reasons. The thing we like about Google Paid, right, as B2B marketers particularly, is intent, isn't it? So there's a different thing going on here, isn't there? And do you think And so you're not going to drive traffic like that through ChatGPT, are you? Or are people going to ChatGPT, do you think, to get answers? And there is intent to buy there.
So I think there are two ways to unpack this. One is the user behavior is different on ChatGPT than it is on Google, right? So people use ChatGPT differently as they use Google, right? And the most simple example I can think of right now is I go to Google to search for what are the best family-friendly hotels in Spain, because I'm planning a summer trip to Spain with my family. On ChatGPT, I might be more precise, right? Prompt engineering became a thing. I might not only put that on ChatGPT, but also might describe, I have a little daughter, she's 4, she likes, she needs a playground. We would preferably have like an outdoor pool, beach nearby. So it's a way more conversational type of experience.
Yeah.
And therefore, yes, it is a different experience, to your point. It's a different way of people using ChatGPT over Google. And therefore, it's also not comparable per se. But the one thing I would like to mention is SEMrush did a super interesting study. They published, I think, a couple of weeks ago, a really interesting study on how people use ChatGPT, where they analyzed millions and millions of prompts. And what they did find, though, is that if people... There are basically two different types of search experiences on ChatGPT. One way is to be very conversational, right? You want to solve a problem. It might not even be a problem you previously asked Google, but previously you might have talked to a person, you might have hired a person, right? Yeah. Now I'm asking ChatGPT to help me with solving this business case or whatever it is, right? And there we use many words. So they analyzed word length, right? And word count. And I forgot the number. I need to look up the survey, but it was a lot, right? Full sentences, long queries, and so on and so forth. That's how we use ChatGPT in one example. But then if we rather compare it with Google and we rather want to conduct a quick search query, and we might activate this web browsing feature now in ChatGPT as well, we use it quite similarly as we use on Google. I just might go there and be like, what's the weather in Vienna right now? Vienna weather, right? So very short search queries. I think it is such a new space. Obviously, there has been lots of change in the last couple of months. And ChatGPT just introduced some latest updates to their models as well. But generally speaking, I think it comes down to the use cases as how we as consumers use ChatGPT these days. And it's not only a Google replacement. Yes, we might rely now more on ChatGPT than we do on Google, but we use ChatGPT for so many more stuff than we haven't used Google in the past.
Well, I think your example was really interesting because obviously I'm fixated by B2B, but this B2C example where you are researching a project, this project of yours happens to be a family holiday, and that will result in a click, right? Because you're not going to book it through ChatGPT. And that would be similar in the Google example. So in that case, a holiday company or a hotel company needs to be cognizant of the fact that they need to be educating ChatGPT that they're the best family holiday out there, and it will lead to a click, which I think is really interesting because there is intent there. Then that's the thing we were talking about, wasn't it? Right.
There is intent.
So that naturally leads me on, as we're both content management geeks and been around this space for quite a while. What impact does that have, do you think, or will have on how we publish content in our content management systems?
Yeah. I think right now the first fundamental question is, do you think those new channels are relevant channels for you as a business, right? As we asked ourselves 25 years ago, so if we want to block, we should block a Google bot from scraping our website. I hear businesses now asking themselves, should we block our website from ChatGPT and its bots, right? It's a valid question, I think. Do I recommend you to do that? Definitely not. But there are big websites in this world who do that, right? Who don't want their content be crawled by a ChatGPT bot. We all might have heard about the New York Times legal case with OpenAI and so on, right? And these are all unresolved questions about copyright, How is content being used to train LLMs and whatnot, right? But I'm not a legal expert, so I would park that topic and would generally look at it from a marketing case. And from a marketing case, the question is, do you want your content, your brand be found on ChatGPT? And if your audience is there, right, you might want to do so, right? You might want to make sure that ChatGPT has access to your website, they can crawl your website, and your content is rightly indexed, similar as it is on Google, right? And in order to do so, you have to think through, yes, the technical SEO foundations still apply, right? If you're an expert on that, I think you're setting a good foundation there. But the whole topic, going back to content management, the whole topic of structured data becomes so much more relevant also now for those LLMs, because those are basically machines interpreting our content, right? And if we are, through our content models, are able to tell OpenAI that this is a headline, this is an author information, this is Ian's bio, this is how Ian wants to be portrayed, this is one clear Ian description, then you can basically also make sure that ChatGPT portrays you as Ian in the way you want to be portrayed, right?
And I read a lot of Joe Pulizzi and listen to his podcast, and if there's one thing anybody knows about this chap Joe Pulizzi, who wrote Content Inc., is he's obsessed with the color orange for various reasons, and I won't go into it. But he asked ChatGPT what Joe Pulizzi's favorite color was, and it came back as purple because somebody had written that once, or it was a different Joe Pulizzi. Those brand attributes that you have, I mean, that's a very personal example, but I think this sort of tells us that we need to keep an eye on what ChatGPT is saying about us and our brands, and make sure that we're presenting ourselves in the best way with these things. But also it also reminded me of the session that we did together and the webinar we did together, because when I was doing the research for that, when we were talking about generative AI, I got it to show me the sources. Now, it's amazing, isn't it, how things move on, like just in 6 months. Now I think ChatGPT by default shows you the sources. But it was a really interesting mix of little websites, vendors I'd never heard of, vendors I had heard of, that were informing the LLM there. And I think, so you really need to have a look at who is informing the LLM about your category and your subject matter expert as a vendor, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's funny that you mentioned our talk again, because I feel so much has changed on OpenAI side since September last year. And one of the key, fundamentally, I think before we talk about key changes, fundamentally, the way I would describe ChatGPT, the way it works, and I'm not a techie, right? So I'm describing that from a marketing angle is, right now, if you go to ChatGPT and the public search, right, and no matter where you are in this world, and you're not logged in, right? I mean, there are certain features only available for paid customers, for free logged in customers. But if you go to ChatGPT General there, the way it works and the way it pulls its information back is basically two options. On the one hand side, we have the LLM model, right? It might be 4 Mini, which is used right now for the public search. And there, we have to understand how was that model trained, on which content, on which data, on which sources was that model trained. That model has a knowledge cutoff date still, right? So it was trained on historical data from a web crawl. It used book libraries. OpenAI isn't really public and talking a lot about how those models were trained. But if you look at some sources and some analyses, it also used certain things like Wikipedia, for example, right? It used even Reddit threads, because OpenAI wanted to make sure that the model is trained on user-generated content, right? High-quality user-generated content. So what I find a bit funny is they looked at Reddit threads with more than 2 comma upvotes, because that kind of gave them a signal that these are real users, real people contributing with high-quality content in a way, right? But long story short, you can go and analyze that and how the LLM was trained. But in addition to that, we have now the web search available for all of us. And the web search is basically based, similar as Google, on a RAG, right? On a web index that allows ChatGPT to browse the website in real time based on the user query, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to your point, not every search query that I as Thomas use on ChatGPT leads to a web search, but also ChatGPT is making that judgment for me.
Yes.
And basically deciding, is that a search query that needs and requires real-time information or not, right? And depending on that, it can go either way.
Yeah.
But the nice thing with web citations is now we can go and study them, right? We can go and study, to your point, on who's showing up, why is it showing up, and how can we make sure our own stuff is showing up, right?
And also, I mean, I think, I hope everybody knows, well, I mean, people that use these tools, and I think that ChatGPT actually says, some of these things may not be true, is you have to click through to the citations, right? And so I think, I'm hoping anyway, maybe I'm being optimistic, that ChatGPT will actually drive probably traffic to our websites organic as much, probably more than the Google AI at the top of the search results does. But I don't know, maybe.
Maybe. I mean, as a marketer, I cross my fingers. I mean, the click-through rates are definitely not there yet, right? No. So because just of the UI and how it works. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we're also seeing referral traffic, and I'm seeing referral traffic in various web analytics tools coming from ChatGPT, which is a good signal. So it's not all lost, but it also comes a bit back to how ChatGPT will evolve from a UI perspective.
Yeah, well, also, and this is a rabbit hole to dive into, is, I mean, it's a bit like voice search or anything like that. And I think we talked about it, is you only get one answer. Whereas on Google, once you've paged through the third of the page or the whole page, which is paid and the generative stuff, you've got thousands of results that you can pick through. So you as a marketer have an opportunity to position yourself in that sea of results with your keywords and the catchphrases you use and stuff like that. You haven't got that opportunity here. ChatGPT is going to give one citation to a point, isn't it? It's not going to give you 1,000. So I think that's interesting. But but I want to get onto your startup, mate, before we run out of time. So because it's really interesting what you're working on right now. So you've co-founded, I know that, sorry to cut you off, we could have carried on that topic for ages, but you co-founded Otterly.ai. Tell us about that, because I think this is very relevant to this conversation. It's not just a plug of your latest project. It is actually very relevant.
Thanks for saying that, Ian. No, I mean, as you heard me before, right? I love to geek out about this change, these disruptions that are currently going through the market and also through marketing teams. And I started Otterly.ai with two former colleagues because I wanted to solve the problems I have as a marketer, right, around the future of SEO, right, and how Google is changing and how we as a marketing team need to adjust to those Google changes, and at the same time be ready for those new channels. So Otterly.ai is a AI search monitoring solution, meaning we help marketing teams monitor and analyze AI search experiences. We monitor right now Google AI reviews, ChatGPT, and Perplexity. And we basically help marketing teams understand how visible they are as a brand and how visible their websites are on those three platforms.
Right. And so my first question really, mate, because I've known you for a little while, is how are you finding startup life?
It's super nice. It's cool. I mean, I'm a builder. I'm a doer. I'm a creative person. So I really enjoy building. I really enjoy. I mean, for a long time, I'm now building wireframes, mock-ups. I'm not a technical person, right? So I leave the programming to my other two colleagues. But I love thinking through user journeys and creating those wireframes. I love thinking through also obviously the marketing and content aspects of it. But at the end of the day, I really enjoy it. It's a startup roller coaster, right? So in one day you're like, will this be a success? And the next day you're like, oh yeah, this is gonna be a success. So there's also like an emotional roller coaster to it, where I'm learning a lot about myself as well. But I mean, long story short, I really enjoyed because it also helps me in my role to get a bit outside of marketing. I'm still talking to many marketing teams because it's a marketing challenge we're solving here. It's a brand challenge we're solving. But at the end of the day, I'm learning a lot about the overall running a business, how to run a business, how to start a business, the legal aspects of it, the organizational aspects of it, the sales side, the product side. So I really enjoy it.
It's cool. I mean, I've worked with a couple of startups in the past and working with a bit bigger organization than yours right now. But it's a very different. And as a marketer, I like to use the phrase that you've got your hands in the marketing dirt because you're doing everything, right? You haven't got a huge team to rely on. So how are you finding marketing a startup? I mean, we've talked about how crazy, noisy the world is right now, and how things have changed, and organic isn't working, all that kind of stuff. How are you finding
that? It's interesting. I'm finding it in I think I've been. I mean, we are bootstrapped for now, right? So fully bootstrapped, super small team. Early, we have about. I think we even crossed 2,000 users on the platform this week, which is super cool for us. But I mean, we don't have a big marketing budget, right? We don't. I mean, marketing is done by myself and my colleagues. We have to be very focused and intentional about what we do. And the thing we think a lot about these days is content, providing really great insights on this topic, because at the end of the day, it's also, to be also very honest, quite an early space, right? A new space. So the biggest limiting factor for us succeed is education. Marketing for us means education, talking to marketers on scale or in one-on-one meetings. That's my number one priority. And it goes back to, yes, we are creating blog content. We create webinars and all those sorts of things. But what doesn't separate us is the format, the channel. But where we try to be different is the quality of content, right? By providing unique insights in that space and really helping other marketing teams understand how they can be better found on ChatGPT, for example, right? So that's one aspect. The other aspect is I'm a fan that marketing also needs to shoot for the moon sometimes, right? You need those moonshots. We constantly think about how can we cut through the noise, right? What can we do differently? And one of the things we found, or we did, because we already did it, it's public, so I can share it. We thought a lot about, well, how do we even announce this new thing? How do we even announce this new startup, this new product, right? And we went the classic PR route, right? Not for the sake of, PR is the way to go, but we thought about everybody's on LinkedIn these days. Everybody's on Google. Wouldn't it be cool to be a fully bootstrapped startup and launch on TechCrunch, right? Get TechCrunch right about us, right? So we were kind of thinking that through and came to the conclusion that could help us generate some buzz. And I mean, luckily we succeeded. We succeeded. It got us some amazing buzz, and I think looking back, I would do it all over again in the same way, right? And similar with us, our company announcement, we're constantly thinking about those moonshots, right? What can we do differently? What other things that do not scale even, right? But we can't just stand out. The other day we were talking about hijacking a conference, right? And with some fun marketing theme and whatnot, right? So you just have to be creative.
Yeah, well, you've got a great image there with the otter and stuff like that. So you're building a strong brand. But and I think that PR thing is interesting, but it's very interesting where you guys are, right? Because it's very on that curve of that famous adoption curve. You're very much in the early adopter stage, aren't you? So therefore, something like TechCrunch suits your ICP and your key persona perfectly, doesn't it? I mean, that's just a perfect match, and then you drive that awareness through other TechCrunch fans who are your early adopters, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would add to that comment, Ian, is, and I learned that I think through that journey as well, is there's so much conversation also in B2B marketing, right? When you look at how we consume content, how do we inform ourselves? it's not, yes, I mean, it's LinkedIn, it's public channels, but it's a lot of secret Slack groups, WhatsApp groups, and whatnot, right? And what I've learned through our announcement and our campaign there is that, yes, the TechCrunch thingy might be one trigger, but this leads to people talking about it in in Slack channels and communities on WhatsApp CMO groups, right? And then this is the place where the conversation happens, and we can't be everywhere, right? I'm not part of I can't be part of every secret WhatsApp group, but then people start reaching out to us, right, from that moment onwards. And I think Winter does fantastic research on how do B2B marketers inform themselves these days, and I think we tend to think a lot about, and I know you tackled this in our shared talk as well, right? Dark social, right? But in order to be in dark social, you have to stand out. You have to get creative on how to get into those conversations.
But also, what that leads us to, and I think you with your TechCrunch experience there, is you do something like this, you're not going to be able to measure that entire success. It's for a certain, there will be some anecdotal evidence where people have come to you, and because of the TechCrunch thing, you'll see all the buzz on LinkedIn and all the vanity metrics, but you won't truly know really the impact that sort of brand splash has had. Which must be interesting.
Oh, we can talk hours about attribution, Ian.
Maybe we'll do that another day, my friend. Let's do that another day. So we better wrap up here. You make a good point. We should wrap up. So for a start, where can people find Otterly?
You can find Otterly on the internet if you go to Otterly.ai.
Sweet.
You can also find us on LinkedIn. And happy to hear and any challenge or thought any marketing team has out there. I'd love to talk. If you just want to exchange thoughts on the space, happy to share.
And when people spin the dial on the interwebs, where are they going to find you, Thomas?
I think the best way is still LinkedIn, right? So you can find me on LinkedIn, but you can also send me an email at thomas@otterly.ai. And happy to pick up that conversation.
Sweet. And I will definitely pick up this conversation. We'll definitely have you back, because I think you covered about 15 topics there, mate, that I think we could dive into. So I look forward to having you back on the show, mate. And until we chat again, have a great one, mate. And I'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ian. Cheers.
Thank you, Thomas. Love chatting with Thomas. And as ever, a really interesting topic there. And of course, I will link to his new project, Otterly.ai, in the show notes. Please check it out. So that's a wrap on episode 260 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. Thank you for dropping a dime into your podcast jukebox, selecting our track and jiving along with us. I've been your host, Ian Truscott. You can find links to me, Thomas, and all the links we referred to there in the show notes on rockstarcmo.com, where you can also find our blog, newsletter, and all of our previous episodes. We'd love to hear from you, so please reach out via the website or LinkedIn. Just search Rockstar CMO, and I'm sure you'll find us. But please let us know you're a listener. The next episode of The Rose and Rockstar with Robert Rose will drop on Saturday. Until then, enjoy the rest of your week. And I hope you'll again join us here at Rockstar CMO FM.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Hennika Watkins-Porter hosts The Entrepreneurial You, empowering entrepreneurs with insights on leadership, business, and success. Hennika, tell listeners what to expect from your show.
So we provide innovative business strategies and practical solutions to common entrepreneurial challenges.
And where can people subscribe?
Find us at hennikawatkinsporter.com, as well as the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcasts.net, or search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.